going back to it, there's always talk about, there isn't much satire going on. That was a constant thing with the mainstream media, but they didn't really look online. You had, the cartoons, Chris Cairns, Greg Moody, the things that you were doing that you've just mentioned. There was BBC Scotlandshire, and there were a number of satirical things. And we can't obviously forget about the fact that we're very well served for the satire with satirical geniuses like Jim Murphy that you mentioned, and George Fulks, and Willie Rennie. I mean, we're entirely well served for satire. It's a difficult market for you to get into.
I'd say yes and no. The indie ref it's actually quite a small bubble, or the pro indie group. It's quite a small bubble. It's not as big as I think we like to think it is at times. And for all the stuff that there is, they've all kind of got their own kind of unique selling point, unique take, and unique audience. So I think for other stuff to come in and sort of liven it up a bit or change it up a bit. I mean, I've got big ideas for the North British News, and even so far, it's only been running for about a month, and already we're pushing the boat out in terms of what we're doing. So.
Yeah. No, I was only joking, because the people that I mentioned there, your folks and your some of the more eccentric unionist side, they must give you a lot of material.
Yeah, I mean, it's always the dilemma, because there's so much comedy. During the referendum, there's so much comedy coming from the No campaign, just the style that they did everything. And even afterwards, and even still just now, you still got Cameron, you still got, like, Boris Johnson came out today, he's in support of leaving the UK, and you've got, the EU, and you've got Farage is now teaming up with George Galloway, so it's still, you still got all the nonsense on that side. So it's always difficult to kind of balance it out and try and poke fun at everybody equally when those in the unions, those politicians and commentators on the unionist side, they don't stop giving. It's something that we should all be grateful for. They just don't stop giving.
Absolutely. And then, so we go back to the site itself then. So you've got various articles that go in there, but there's also animations which have got a little following, but also people tend to really enjoy the live ticker part on the animations as well. But could you tell us how much actually goes into making those animations? What's the process there?
Too much goes into making those animations. Far too much. It usually starts on probably Saturday or Sunday after the last week's ones went up, and the panic is over with. I started thinking about what to do next week, and so that requires picking characters. And then, either over the weekend or Monday, Tuesday, I'll be spend all the time drawing those characters, whatever situations or whatever ideas I think of. I think last week's was we had Kezia Dugdale was going to save everybody in Scotland, and then the thing was she was going to go on the doorsteps and tell people that she destroyed the Death Star, and then it cuts to Luke Skywalker, a Scottish Luke Skywalker, telling her she was talking shite. Mm-hmm. So it's that sort of stuff. And then Wednesday's script day, that's script and voice work, and then the rest of Wednesday and Thursday is putting the animation together.
Is it done at home? Like, are you sitting working on the computer all the time?
Yeah, just sitting staring at a screen, day in, day out.
Yeah, because sometimes...
I feel like that chewing the fat sketch.
You mentioned that you've got some big plans for the North British News. Are you able to say where you want to take it in the future?
Well, it all really depends how the crowdfunder goes. I mean, I think I said on the crowdfunder, if it doesn't seem to be garnering much interest, then, I'll play it out until, look at whatever money's raised and play it out till then. But if it does look like people are interested and people want to fund it, then it's going to expand. It's, I'm trying to build more than just a news broadcaster. It's kind of a world. Welcome to Scotlandshire is the tentative title for that. And
the world view that comes up with, Welcome to Scotlandshire, I don't mean in your sense, but, that kind of attitude that you see in the Scottish media, was that something that's always really bothered you, the too small, too wee, too poor, too stupid sort of idea? Does that mean the inspiration behind it?
Probably. I mean, I came from, just skim over where I come from, I was a no voter to begin with when all this started. So I didn't think anything of the media or politicians in general. So, it's the same story with most people during the referendum. You go through the process, and then your eyes get opened, and then you just can't believe how you used to view the world. But yeah, especially afterwards, I think there was a tiny moment after the referendum where the BBC Scotland started to show all the grassroots stuff that was happening on the yes side after the vote. And they were interviewing people from like National Collective, from Rick, and they're showing all the rallies and all the canvassing. And then when it looked like the SNP membership wasn't, this wasn't going away, it all just reverted back to how it was pre-referendum, and everything sort of seemed to close down, and it went back to that really narrow terms of debate. So yeah, I think that's where the North British news comes from. It's essentially the broadcaster, the worst broadcaster possible. So it's sort of taking the mick out of that, but it's also at the same time, there are issues in the media, and it's sort of really taking that to task.
And I noticed you have a go at sort of conspiracy theorists as well, throughout your online content. But what do you think about the idea that some people would say, the fact that they say that the media is biased against Scottish independence? Well, that's a conspiracy theory. Obviously, I don't think so. But I mean, how do you respond to that sort of accusation that comes from the no side?
It depends on your view. You have to look at where people are coming from. I'm talking about regular no voters and stuff. You have to sort of put yourselves in their shoes and see how they view. People always constantly get on about, oh, it's biased this and biased that. It's the media. They sort of just tune out, I think. But when it comes from the political commentators and stuff like that, I think they know exactly what's up, and they're just being very coy in regards to how biased our media is, or at least imbalanced that it is.
Do you think it's mostly sins of omission? In the sense that, you said there that after the referendum was a brief window, they were showing Rick, etc., in different groups. But they didn't show any of that before the referendum. None of it.
Yeah, it was... I mean, their excuse was they had to be balanced, which is a nonsense, because if you're going to be balanced, well, show what's happening on both sides. But because the No campaign was so dire on the grassroots, they just didn't show anything of it. And then they thought, oh, well, we can't show anything on the yes side. And I think it's more structural, and, lots of people have talked about this. It's not just straight up, oh, we hate the Nat, got a deliberate agenda, and they sit around their meeting rooms and, oh, how can we do the Nats down? I don't think it's that. It's more structural and institutional bias. They have a status quo, and anything outside of their media bubble, as it were, especially because we've got regional broadcasting and not national broadcasting up here, that they just view it as a threat, and thus they don't really take it seriously.
Do you think we should actually have, a real Scottish Six?
Oh, no, because everybody in Scotland's really rubbish at doing everything. And if we had a Scottish Six, it'd just be Alex Salmond who'd read the news himself, and he'd just be talking about haggis and stuff. So, yeah, of course we should have it. I mean, it's something that really annoys me in terms of the creative industries, in terms of our institutions. I mean, there's the breakdown of BBC programming, BBC Scotland programming that came out when they had their committee meeting at Holyrood. And just the sheer audacity that they could sit and, it's not a problem. I think it's 350 or 325 million is raised in Scotland for the licence fee, and only 35 million is spent on Scottish television. And that's not the lift and shift programmes where, they bus everybody up from London, go home at the weekend. It's quite an insult.
There seemed to be a real lack of investment in it. And just one for the football fans, that's one of the facts that I found most shocking. The BBC spent more on Alan Hansen's salary than they did on an entire Scottish football.
It doesn't surprise me at all. It's the running joke that, Scottish football is just generally crap. But you look at the investment in it, and you look at BBC's investment, and it's no wonder that it comes across as so amateur compared to the English Premier League and stuff like that. Because there's just no money going into it, so you're not going to get, a quality product.
No, absolutely not. And to go on from journalism and media to a journalist, can I ask you why you do this Fresh Prince of Bel-Air lyrics thing with Stephen Daisley? Every time he tweets, you start tweeting the lyrics of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air at him, and I've never quite understood that. Well,
Stephen Daisley, I blocked him for ages. He used to be funny. He used to be quite interesting. But it seems like after the SNP landslide, something just snapped in him, and he's just went completely off the rails. He kind of hid his kind of right-wing agenda quite well. It was always hidden beneath the surface. But after May, he's just went totally nuts. And, I mean, some of the stuff he writes, a lot of people would be saying that they get really annoyed at STV because it gives Stephen a platform with no terms of rebuttal, and he seems to be the only political analyst that they have, which is quite one-sided. Just some of the stuff he comes out with annoys me, and I think it's funnier to take the piss out of him. I see people taking the bait, because all he does all day is just troll on Twitter looking for reactions from nationalists so he can go, see, I told you, they're terrible. So yeah, I thought the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air lyrics, every time I see a tweet of his, I just put Fresh Prince of Bel-Air lyrics. Although I need to find something new. I've run out now. So I might do Disney songs or something.
Are there any other people on social media or journalists that you find particularly unusual, or anyone involved in the debate? You know, I mean, George Filks is always one that I tend to go back to because he tends to come out with bizarre utterances from time to time. But is there anyone that particularly gets your goat or perks your interest?
I go through phases. I mean, I think at times you have to take yourself. You can get too invested in the Twitter bubble and all the nonsense that goes on and get too wound up by it. And so you go through phases of realizing that you're getting too involved in it and then stepping away for a bit and then go back in. But Staisley was always one of them. Muriel Gray, I think, is another who I don't even know how to describe. It just seems like a detachment from reality or a very different reality from what I experience. And that's true of quite a few of the commentators, Ewan McComb, Chris Deering, all that lot. They just seem to inhabit this different world, and the stuff that they come out with is just, you sort of just can't believe, or it takes some time for me to comprehend that these are people in positions of influence, very educated individuals, but they come out with the most ridiculous stuff, and you half expect them to just be like sitting about in the rooms wearing tinfoil hats, to prevent Nicola Sturgeon's radio waves from infecting their brain.
And sometimes I find a lot of that stuff comes with a certain tone to it, like we know what's good for the little people, but they've been duped by this monolithic party that's totally dictatorial, and when the little people come to their senses, everything will be fine again. I find that sort of attitude permeates a lot of the output of quite a number of people.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's what we're seeing is the commentators and the political class who for so long have had all the doors open to them because it's been Labour that's been in every kind of facet of Scottish life, and now they're finding the mountains shifted essentially, and they used to be able to dictate public opinion, but through online to social media, and then you had the referendum as well, and everything like that combined, people are no longer quite as accepting of this wisdom that's apparently getting passed down, and they talk back and they challenge what's being said, and they do their own research. And I think that's really gets under the skin of our journalists and our commentators and our established arts figures, because they're so used to being able just to say what they want and have it taken as gospel.
Yeah, and now no one's listening anymore. The declining sales also shows that.
Yeah, I think it's the impotence of their influence is what I see. And they're just kind of wailing and gnashing teeth because there's nothing they can do about it. I mean, people are